Hi, my name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel, and I wanted to talk about two things in particular this evening. The first is what's going on in the silver market combined with what's going on with what dealers are now offering for 90% silver. And then I want to talk about some resources that everybody who is investing in silver ought to be familiar with and should be using them, if not on a daily basis, at least whenever they're preparing to buy or sell silver. But first I want to talk about what the silver market's doing. Right now, as I'm speaking, a spot price for silver as of December 3rd, 2025, about 6 o'clock Central Time, is $58.35. Well, we're talking about all-time highs. However, if you look at what the dealers are currently paying for 90% silver, you realize that there is something of a disconnection between the two. I like to check the different dealers that are offering to purchase on a regular basis. SD Bullion, JM Bullion. I like Brian Vermillion in Spring Hill, Florida, because he has a daily update. Usually, although it's been a couple of days since he's updated his prices. And then before I sell, I always call my local dealer, and he's usually the one I go with. His name is Tom Stout, his son Brett Stout. They own Stout Safe Storage. I believe Brett is the primary principal in that business right now, but they always give me a fair price, and typically it's about as reflective of the market as anybody. But I checked SD Bullion on Monday, and they were offering, as recently as 2 days ago, online $3.75 to purchase 90% silver, $3.75 below spot. Well, I checked again yesterday, and they were $6.80 below spot for 90% silver. I checked again just a few minutes ago, and they were $8.35 an ounce below spot for 90% silver. Now, they're paying much closer to the spot price when it comes to 0.999 silver, especially if you're talking about U.S. American Eagles and things like that. But the 90% market has been one of the staples within the silver market ever since I've been investing in silver. And this is about as high of a disparity between spot price and what dealers will actually give you as I have ever seen. Well, JM Bullion, I checked them, and they are actually $9.10 below spot as of December 3rd when it comes to purchasing 90% silver. And Vermillion on Monday was $6 below spot for purchasing 90% silver. But again, he hasn't posted in the last 2 days, at least not that I'm aware of. And so there's been a pretty big fall off in 90%. And so this is something that I believe people need to be aware of, not so much to scare you off of purchasing this, but to make sure that when you're buying it, that you're not buying it anywhere near spot. Especially if you're buying from one of these big dealers that I just mentioned. If their spread is much more than $3 or $4 an ounce, I would stay away from them right now. That spread will tighten as time goes by. It always has, but right now it seems like the dealers are selling for considerably more than they're purchasing for, with the exception of some of the local dealers. Again, Vermillion in Florida has been offering about a $1.50 spread, and that's about as good of a spread as I've seen in the industry, but he hadn't updated that spread for a couple of days, so I'm not sure that that's still the situation. But anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that there is starting to be quite a chasm between spot silver and 90%, and you may want to take that into consideration prior to buying or selling 90% at the current time. Now, having said that, I wouldn't worry about it too much. 90% silver has been a staple of collectors for a number of years and a staple of stackers for a number of years. I don't think it's going to fall completely out of favor. It's just one of those market anomalies. It's one of the more painful ones that I have seen, but typically they don't last a real long time. And so I wouldn't get too concerned about it, especially if you're dollar cost averaging and if you're not planning on selling anyway. There's not any reason for you to rush out and sell if you weren't planning on it in the first place. And so this is just something to be keeping in mind as of this current time that we're in. The second thing I wanted to talk to you about today is in a much different area of the silver market, and that is in the resources that I believe that all silver investors need to have on hand. Some of them are just tools, simple tools like a magnifying glass and a scale, even a magnet, to make sure that you've got genuine coins and so that you can inspect them as closely as possible. These will help you, I believe, considerably. Just an old magnifying glass. I've got one from my wife's grandmother that I use to this day, and it's very handy. I have found counterfeit coins just by examining them with a magnifying glass. And I've also found some coins that were much rarer than I had thought they were. I also like to use a scale. I bought just a little cheap jewelry scale a number of years ago. It cost me $15. It still works. The battery's still good in it. And it's very accurate. And through the years, I have found a number of coins that just looked a little bit off, and so I'd throw them on the scale and see if they were genuine or not, and very often they wouldn't weigh right. And this is particularly true of the Morgan series. The Morgan silver dollar has been heavily counterfeited through the years, and so you really have to be careful. Some of the counterfeits are good as far as the weight goes, but there are other areas that you can use to determine whether they're counterfeit or not. But very often, just a simple scale can save you a lot of money. I bought a 1897 O Barber dime, probably last year. Bought it for a pretty good price because it was in very fine condition. And so this would have been a very valuable dime, but when it came in through the mail, it didn't look right. And so I put it on the scale, and sure enough, it weighed a couple grams over what a Barber dime should be weighing. Well, any time you see that type of a variance, it's probably a counterfeit because the U.S. Mint really didn't make too many mistakes like that. And so that 1897 Barber dime went right back to the seller. I hope they didn't resell it, but at least I wasn't stuck with it because I had just a simple scale. And so that $15 scale saved me hundreds of dollars in the long run. There are other tools that I like to use. One of my hobbies, in addition to collecting coins and stacking silver, is old books. And so I'm always looking online for old coin books. And every once in a while, I'll find one that's a pretty good bargain, and I'll pick it up. I found one. This is a report from the director of the Mint from, I believe, 1885. This was something that the government printing office printed up for Congress, and it's just got all sorts of fascinating information. So that was something that I really enjoyed. I found another book not too long ago called A History of the Currency of the United States. This was printed in 1915. I've also found History of the U.S. Mint from 1895 and just different books like that. And I enjoy looking through them and seeing what was going on during that time. Another thing I like to do is buy old magazines, coin magazines. I came across a group of them the other day, coin prices, some of the magazines, and one of them was from 1973. It was 2 years after Nixon closed the gold window. On August 15th of 1971, Nixon stopped allowing the U.S. to exchange its gold for dollars, as had been the agreement with the world. And so when he closed that, even though Americans couldn't buy gold per se, they could collect gold coins. And so gold coins became really popular in the next few years, and you'd see magazines with big old advertisements on them for the different types of gold coins. And so that was interesting to me. I loved the old Coin World magazine. I can remember enjoying just looking at the ads as much as the articles on that. And by looking at those, I could compare what one dealer was selling their product over another dealer. My first monster box I ever purchased was through an advertisement in Coin World magazine. I think it was in the mid 90s, and I was able to buy a monster box, I think, for a little over $3,000 at the time. And so that was one of the things that got me into stacking physical silver, because of the idea of having it in hand was starting to appeal to me more and more than doing the trading within the commodities market as I had done for a number of years. That was essentially where I started stacking silver. When I found a good deal online, typically through eBay, I would buy that. A lot of people don't like eBay, but I think it's one of the most excellent sources for coins you can find. You do have to be careful. You have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to recognize a counterfeit coin from one that's genuine, whether or not it's something that's advertised in the right way. When it comes in and you hold it in your hand, you can usually figure out pretty quick. And eBay has a good protection system in place for the buyers. And so if you buy something that's counterfeit, even if the seller won't take care of it, eBay typically will. But again, that's another good resource. But the second resource that I really enjoyed is the old books and the old magazines, because they just have so much information in them. As a more practical matter, for those of you who are investing in silver right now, there's several websites that if you're not already familiar with, I would get familiar with them very quickly. The first is the Kitco website. Kitco gives the spot prices for all sorts of metals: gold, palladium, platinum, and silver. And you can also get historic charts on that same site. And so I always look to Kitco first, because Kitco will show the spot price. It gives you a good idea of where to start with as far as what silver should be fairly valued. I also like the CNBC website. I'm not wild about CNBC, but they have some good financial data on that. You can find out what the futures are selling for on the CNBC website. Usually when you look at their gold and silver quotes, you're going to be looking at the closest futures month that's regularly traded. I think right now on CNBC, the price that you see for silver is going to be maybe 20 or 30 cents higher than the spot price, because they're showing the next delivery month on that. The next thing I really like to do is I like to find historic charts. I believe if you're going to be investing in silver, it would really do you a lot of good to get familiar with what that market has done through the years, or any market that you're interested in, gold or stocks or whatever it is that you're wanting to look at, Bitcoin. You can find historical charts on these things, and I like to go and look at charts, some of them as old as 100 years, and you can see what silver has been doing. You can see probably one of the most prominent cup and handle formations, a very important formation for chartists. Essentially what a cup and a handle formation is it shows two peaks, and then it shows a little bit of a downturn and then back up to another peak, and that's called the handle. And when it gets to that point and exceeds it with conviction, usually the market is going to run for a while, and that's exactly what happened when it finally broke through $54. Well, just in the last few days, it's just kept going up at a fairly steady pace. It can go down really, really fast. I want to caution you on that. And looking at the charts, you're going to become familiar with that fact if you haven't already experienced it firsthand. So that third group of tools or resources will be your online websites that give you the values of whatever it is you're trading. In our case, it's going to be silver. And then the fourth thing that I really enjoy looking at are different YouTube channels that are specifically aimed at precious metals. I like to watch Brian Vermillion because he gives his daily quotes as far as what he's buying and selling silver and gold for, and so that's a great website. I like listening to Andy Schechtman every once in a while with Miles Franklin. He's always got some good information on that. One caution with him is he is a seller of precious metals, and so he's very much convicted that they're going to be going up, and he can be very persuasive on that, as can most of the precious metals dealers. So make sure that when you get on these websites, you understand what their motivation is. Again, I think Andy Schechtman is a good guy. I've been watching him for quite a number of years. He's also affiliated with some other people that I have really enjoyed. One of them is Dunnigan Kaiser. Dunnigan used to have a website called Reluctant Preppers that I watched for years before he became affiliated with Miles Franklin and started primarily looking at the gold and silver market. He has a lot of guests who are pretty knowledgeable, and he's usually got 2 or 3 programs a week. And so I would look at that website if you're interested in it. It's called Liberty and Finance. I really like him. His language is clean for one thing, which is somewhat rare in the industry. Another person that's affiliated with Miles Franklin is a man by the name of Bill Holter. I became familiar with Bill Holter when I was following Jim Sinclair a number of years ago, and Bill Holter came in with him, and so I've been very familiar with him. I like his information. He's pretty blunt, but he usually has a pretty good idea of what's going on, and he's worth listening to. Another website is called the Gold Silver website, Mike Maloney, and Mike Maloney's probably been investing in silver and talking about silver and gold probably for about 20 years plus now, and he's always got some good information, some of the best charts in the business. There's another gentleman on that website, I can't recall his name, but he's quite knowledgeable as well, and so that's a good website. I listen to Johnny Bravo every once in a while. He is more of a chartist, he's more of a day trader, but he does have some good information, and he's entertaining to watch to boot on that. And so those are just some of the different YouTube channels that I like to go to for information. There's another man named Mario Aneko from England. His channel is called Maneko64. I've been watching him for quite a number of years. He's always got some good financial information. There's a lot of others out there. You're probably familiar with some of them as well, but that's the fourth set of resources that I would use are these YouTube channels. Well, there are some other things that you can do as well, but the reason I think that we all need to be fairly diligent in using the resources that we have available to us is silver is so high right now and gold is so high right now that they're a significant investment. If you're just jumping in and joining the crowd, sooner or later you're going to get burned. So with prices so high, make sure that you are current with the market. This example of what has happened between the spot price and what dealers are paying for 90% is a good example of how important it is to keep up to date with that so you don't pay too much and so you don't sell for too little on that. Well, that's the video for today. I hope it's something that's of interest to you. Let me know what you think in the comments. I love looking at the comments. It's become much more of a forum from some fairly intelligent people, and I enjoy looking at those comments. I learn a lot from them. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, please share any comments that you might have. I think it'll help everybody on that. Let me know what websites you like and what YouTube channels you like, because I'm always looking for good resources. And so if you have any along those lines or any good books or magazines, I'd be interested in that as well. But again, that's the message for today. I hope it's something that gives you some tools to be able to invest a little bit more prudently as we go along with this bull market that we seem to be riding right now. Thank you for watching tonight. I'd certainly appreciate it. I hope we'll see you again next time. God bless.